I've talked about my level of education before, which is actually not that high. You know, I mean, I have an associate's degree from community college. Before that, I went to college for 3 years. Between, what was I was 20, from 20 to 22. 23. I'm trying to remember exactly what age I was. I mean, it was 3 full years, but my birthday's in July, so let's see. Yeah, you know, 20, 22, 23. I'm trying to remember if I was like, if maybe I turned 23 after my junior year in college, and left. My grades were all right. They were all right. And actually, thinking about that time in my life, you know, I think I really made a good decision about which school I went to. It's not an Ivy League level school, but I think that was actually better for me than something else would have been at the time. You know, I mean, I think my teachers had a lot less pressure on them, so they, I really can only think of a couple of bad teachers that I had the entire time that I was at the school that I went to. Really, I mean, all of my teachers were like, they seemed like they had lives outside of the classroom. They were totally present in the classroom. They were prepared for class all the time. You know, all of their tests and quizzes and homework assignments were relevant, and like, it was everything that a college experience really ought to be. Probably not as intellectually demanding as I probably could have handled. But, you know, it doesn't matter, because they were such great teachers. The classes were interesting, and I got a lot of information out of them. And I think you know, considering how miserable I was, considering how drugged up I was with psychiatric medication, that, you know, I mean, I resisted it for as long as I could, but you know, they just crush you. They crush you when you're a child and you're a teenager. You know, all these people who, some of them are well-meaning, some of them are less well-meaning. I think the pharmaceutical industry really got to a lot of people. I mean, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that they spent, you know, wooing doctors and wooing all medical establishments and everything. People know about it to a certain extent, but it certainly has affected everything. It's hard to get money for research now. So I mean, they have taken over the world, which was what they meant to do. You know, so there were times I slept like 12 hours a day. I did, and I was dead to the world, absolutely dead to the world. And that went on for 3 years. You know, I mean, there were times when it was like a week or two at a time. I couldn't get out of bed. It wasn't because I wanted to, like, you know, not go to class. I literally just could not get out of bed. I was just like so sedated. And there wasn't a reason for it. You know, I mean, and it made me miserable, and it made me fat, and it, like, screwed up my skin, and it screwed up other parts of my body, and it was just like, you know, it was horrible. But, you know, where was I with this? Yeah, but, you know, other than that, which of course it was not my teacher's fault that I was on all these drugs. I didn't know anything about it. You know, it was just kind of the way that psychiatry was working at the time, and it just seems like it's so automatic now. Like, so many kids and so many teenagers get put on those drugs, you know, from the time that they're like literally like 2 and 3 years old. So it's terrible. It's really a terrible situation. But anyway, yeah, and the school that I went to, I mean, my parents had really wanted me to do well in school. You know, so I mean, academically, that was like really, you know, my first priority, you know, was to get good grades, like literally all the way through grade school, and I did. And I also, you know, I think there was the time when my parents were young, I think, was a time when people were talking, like people in their cohort were talking a lot about what it meant to have personal freedom. They were, you know, everybody paid attention to politics. My parents, and there were kind of just lots of books around, you know. I mean, they definitely just kind of like all the books my parents had in their house. Definitely 1984 was one of them. Brave New World was one of them. You know, these are, you know, old copies of these books. I mean, I read Brave New World. A copy of it, you know, like the pages of it were actually falling apart. Like when I read it, you know, and there were other types of books talking about history and that kind of thing were always just kind of around. Although, you know, I got like a fair amount of sort of like the idea of history and how it works and how how people are, just from kind of listening to my parents talk. So, but I don't think I'm the only one. So I think when I talk about education, of course, my education, I did not progress past after I left the college that I had gone to. A few years later, I transferred a bunch of those credits into a community college in Burlington, in Vermont, and then took a few more classes, and then I got an associate's degree. And I did that because I wanted, if I wanted to continue and get a bachelor's degree, and I wanted to make sure that I showed that I wasn't just like a college dropout, that I had gone back to school and actually got an A degree, which I now have. And then, before I tried to apply again for a bachelor's degree, but of course that was like 10 years ago. I mean, all of this stuff with Famous World has like taken over my life, pretty much for the last 10 years. But it was always my plan to try to get a bachelor's degree. So I think that I've talked about this a few other times. I understand the importance of education. I mean, my parents, I think, were middle class. I think it was financially difficult, to a certain extent for them to help me with school. Now, of course, we're not on speaking terms and never will be again. But, I mean, it's like, and of course, I'm so poor, and a school is like twice as expensive as it was when I was in my teens and my 20s and that kind of thing. So it's a bit daunting, actually, to consider, what it's going to be like to, try to continue and get a bachelor's degree. I just feel like I understand the importance. I understand the importance of education, and I understand the importance of personal freedom, and I understand the importance of like not having the government like run every part of your life. I understand those things, and I understand those things because like the path that my life took after I graduated from high school and was in the hospital and all that thing, like all that kind of thing, where you're like working in menial jobs. I understand what it means to be poor and working in a way that I never could have understood if this stuff hadn't happened to me. I understand all that. From a perspective, I don't think I ever could have understood it if I had just kind of continued along the path that I was supposed to be on. From the time that I started school, from the time that I started like first grade. So when I'm not trying to lecture people from a place of superiority. I'm talking about things from a perspective of reality. I really am. I understand what it means to CR 928. I understand what it means to be to think that you're going to be poor your whole life. And to work for $7 and $8 an hour, and to never really be, in charge of your own life, because you always have to be nice to so and so, you always have to do this, you always have to do that to make sure you don't lose your jobs, to make sure you don't lose the roof over your head. I understand all of those things, I really do, because for a long time I thought that was all I was ever going to be able to do. So my perspective on it is probably not quite the same as someone who did not have any of the opportunities I had, and it's not quite the same as someone who has had a lot more opportunities than I have had. And of course, it's for me, it's nauseating to see all these celebrities who have so much money by the time that they're like in high school, who just like spend it all on parties. They spend it all on parties. They spend it all on drugs. They spend it all on showing off. They spend it all. The last thing on their minds is actually getting an education. And it's like, wow, I'm still paying off my student loans. It's just like it's like literally like the amount of student loan that I have left now is something that like these people spend in like 5 minutes. They spend it in 5 minutes, and yet they are totally swept up in the way the conglomerate treats me, because they don't understand. They don't understand what it means to be poor and powerless, and they certainly don't understand what it means to be female and poor and powerless. Or to be powerless in some other way, where there's somebody else who's always running your life. They don't understand any of that, because they've been probably telling their own parents what to do since they've got their first paycheck for $1 million, right? So they're without comprehension of what all of this stuff means, and it's just very, very frustrating to see them so focused on such trivial things, as if the way that they've been able to humiliate me, or try to humiliate me, because I try not to feel humiliated, because I know that it's so wrong. But I'm human like everybody else. It doesn't feel good, stuff that's happened to me. As if their focus on the trivial things in my life Even something like being in the shower, you know. I mean, I know that that's, yeah. I mean, you want to say something about my non-sex life? Yeah, that's my non-sex life. You know, it's the best I can do. It was the best I can do being poor. You know, the best I can do having no options. The best I can do not being able to meet anybody. The best I can do like being so isolated. You know, and then but you're all like laughing at me like, oh, but you know, look at you who has no boyfriend. It's like, yeah. Why do you think that's funny? You know, I get it. I know that. But then like to act like all that stuff added up means that I'm just this like really ridiculous person, instead of saying, wow, look at you, you know, you're invading my life in every possible way, you know, you're so stupid, and yet you think that somehow you're superior to me, right? And you haven't got the vaguest idea of what all of these things you're contributing to actually mean, or what the repercussions are going to be. You never do understand that. And that's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to deal with people who think that every time I open my mouth to say anything, you know, that's not flattering to them, it's because I'm just like, you know, old and ugly and poor and just jealous of them when I could not be less jealous. It's so infuriating to see them like throw away these gobs of cash, you know, that could pay for a college education for like so many people, you know, and they don't care about being educated themselves. That's the thing, you know, they don't care about that. They haven't all this time.